Now, what is the background of the Buddha's time? Now, if you really want to specifically study the sociology of the Buddha's time, the India of the Buddha's time, first location, you have the map. Okay? And you can see the map, those shaded area on the top map is more or less the area of the Buddha, okay? The area where the Buddha lived and taught, right? This map is found in the book, it's one of the books called Buddha's Philosophy, right? And also found in my book called Life of the Buddha. So this region, the shaded region, both left shaded, right shaded, is about the size of Singapore and Malaya, the peninsular Malaysia, this kind of distance. So you can imagine, it's quite big, quite huge. Right? Imagine the Buddha walking from here to Bali. Long time, it takes a long time. Right? And he walks, like it takes like 9 months. All long. We're not talking about jogging, we're talking about mindful monk walking with about 500 other monks following him. And we're not talking about highway, no such roads in the Buddha's time. They are dusty roads. Horses running around, no trains. So the Buddha will, and trees, jungle everywhere. So the Buddha will walk and then stop at a village. So in other words, daytime when they walk, they must end up somewhere near a village, otherwise next day they go hungry. So they were not like that. And whenever the Buddha comes to Islam, people will welcome him. People are so happy to meet them because people rarely come visit them anyway. They're so remote, So they will come, ask the Buddha questions and so on. And they're very new to other kinds of teaching. So people are very curious. And the Buddha will teach them. Right? So that's first background. Second background, if I tell you, the historians call the Buddha's time the second urbanization of India. What impression do you get? The second urbanization. The first urbanization was Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley, over the side, where there were cities. So when you say urban means what? Urban means cities. Cities, specialization of economy, right? In other words, there were farmers, yes, but people were becoming more specialized. You don't have to work like a farmer. What's the advantage of working as a farmer? Everything is there. You go to the field, you plant some vegetables, and you can eat subsistence living. But now there is a kingdom, so they want all these vegetables. So the farmer will take vegetable and sell it at the market. So there's a big market economy. And the people in the city don't have to work. They use money. They use money to buy things. That means there is specialization. Just like how we're living today. You don't have to cook food, you can just go out and buy. We don't have to make clothes, we go out and buy. It's a money economy, you see? And that means we also have more time. Now if you have more time, means you either go for holiday or you start worrying, start thinking. Because if you are working, you don't think too much, you just work. Right? So if you have a lot of leisure time, you either enjoy, you don't enjoy, you worry. Right? Another thing is the political situation. I told you just now you've got the republics and the kingdoms. The republics were weakening. The kings were getting more and more powerful. In fact, when you talk about Asoka, the foundation of the Indian Empire that Asoka extended to its greatest extent started in the Buddha's time, when the kings began to conquer other kingdoms. And at first, the kingdoms fell, two kingdoms, Anga, Magadha, and so on. And then slowly the kingdoms merged, became bigger and bigger. Asoka's time became very big, covered almost the whole of it. In other words, people also see wars going on. So when there are wars, we get affected, and we lose people. And we also get worried, will we get killed? It's like having a tsunami or an earthquake. So people also started worrying, thinking. So it was a time when people asked some very basic questions in life. In fact, in Singapore also you see that you find there's a very interesting aspect of Singaporeans which is not often covered in the newspapers. Singaporeans on the average are affluent, but at the same time there are many people, given the chance, they want to find out more about life. What's the meaning of life? So most Singaporeans will travel. They will go to some quiet place, some country, somewhere, and look for answers. Maybe they just travel around the world. Singapore is so small, claustrophobic sometimes. You have to get out and find out the truth. So that is why Buddhism is so popular in Singapore. Religion is important in Singapore. People want to know quality of life. Yes, we have quantity of life. We have money, we have condos, we have things. How about quality of life? So it's something similar is happening in the Buddhist time. People were well off, they were rich, they live in cities, they were in a sense safe because the kings have conquered big areas and the country has become very stable. So the Buddha could move freely around. And one more thing important for the Buddha, he's non-political. So everybody wants to befriend him. All the kings want to befriend because the Buddha was also very wise, so they want to get advice from him. So the Buddha moved freely amongst the different kingdoms, unhindered, unlike the kings. The king cannot simply go to the next kingdom. The Buddha, no problem, he can move anywhere. But of course the Buddha will only go in this region here is the most civilized, urbanized. Yeah? And you can see some of the names there, those are the clans. So Shakya, can you see Shakya in the north? That is the Buddha's home, Kapilavastu, where he was born. Can you see that? Alright. Then the Magadha is another kingdom, and towards the southeast, Magadha. Capital is Rajagriha. Then you have another kingdom. Wangsa is a kingdom, Chaitya is a kingdom, Mala is another kingdom. Kosala, can you see Kosala? Somewhere in the center at the top. And then you see Panchala. So all those big words, capital letters, they are names of kingdoms. Just small kingdoms scattered all over India. So it was a time of the kingdoms and the republics. The kings were building their empires. In other words, there is greater peace, people can move around, they have more time, so they began to ask questions. Now, in the Buddhist time, what was the religion like? The predominant religion is called brahmanism. Brahmanism, of course, is the religion of the Brahmins. Brahmanism is the root of Hinduism. There was no Hinduism in the Buddhist time. Hinduism is a relatively late term. In fact, the word Hindu doesn't exist. It's not an Indian word. The word Hindu originally refers to the river Sindhu. The river is somewhere here. But it is a name used by the Persians and the Chinese. Chinese call India Sindhu. Yeah? Sindhu. So it's a foreigner's reference to India, but somehow the name was stuck with it. So Hinduism is a later religion. By the way, if you meet an Indian, a Hindu, he has a different view. He has this romantic view that Hinduism stretches right back to the beginning of time. And the Buddha also was a Hindu. So I wouldn't argue with that because they are very strong in their faith. So just say, very nice, happy Deepavali, and just keep it like that. But scholars will tell you, Hinduism, the word Hindu came much later. Buddha's time, there was Brahmanism, the religion of the Brahmins. What is this? The Brahmins were the priests. Now, if you look further to the west, what ancient civilization do you have before Buddha's time, before Islam? Further west, towards Persia, you have Mesopotamia. Have you heard of Mesopotamia? The rulers there were the priests. So this is a trend in the Buddhist time. The priests were very powerful. So in India also the priests were very powerful. But in India, there were also another class called the Kshatriya. They were the warriors. And you have the Vaishya, the merchants, and you have the Shudra, the workers. These are the four classes. And in a while I'll tell you how the four classes arose. Now, there's one more term you need to know. Aryans. Now this is a Sanskrit term. Adita and Arya. Notice if you look at the Indians today, some of them are fair skinned, some of them are dark skinned. Those in the south, the Tamils, the Telugus, and so on, they are dark skinned. They are called the natives, if you like. They were there before the white skin. Okay. The white skinned northern Indians, they are more Caucasoid, okay. Now the white skinned people, they were the Brahmins. The Brahmins are white skinned people, basically. In fact, these first three classes, all these classes usually they're white skinned, basically. So the dark skin were outcasts. You see, so here, according to scholars, these Aryans, or the white skinned people, they came from the Russian steppes. Huge open space, like all the Mongols wandering around. It's a huge country. Okay? So they came down through the Khyber Pass. They started conquering all the places there, and then they came to India. Okay? Nice. Now, I need to tell you a bit about their religion because it's going to be reflected in Buddhism later. Here again, we begin to see how nature defines the religion of a community. So these Aryans, they were basically horsemen, very powerful tribesmen, just like the Huns and the Mongols. So when they were in the steppes are very flat and open like the prairies of America. The winds are very strong. So their god is a wind god called Rudra. Okay. Then later, when they went to the cold part of the steppes, another important god came into prominence. That's the god of, obviously, fire. It's called Agni. Now look at this word Agni. It's so easy to remember because of the connection in English. Agni is Sanskrit. Agni is Pali. Pali is always simpler. Now, have you seen this word ignis? Ignis is Latin, meaning fire. Agnis and Agni, same root. From the word ignis, you get ignite. What does ignite mean? To light, right? Fire. There you are. So Agni is the god of fire, right? So the Aryans worship fire. But when they came into India, this Ganges, the rich Ganges plain, the Ganges river runs across here. You got 3 seasons. For example, the rainy season is just over. Oh, this is January, it's a long over. The rainy season is like July to October. The months will spend 3 months. So that's the lot of rain. Now the rains are stopping. Now, cold season, right? Is it cold season? Yeah, it's the cold season, end of the year, right? And then in July, you got a hot season. That's when they start harvesting. So you see the plants growing, and then floods come, and so on. So you see growing, and then flourishing, and then destruction. So they started worshipping 3 gods. Who did they worship? First, they worship Brahma, the creator. This is the Trinity, by the way. So these were the 3 ancient gods of the Brahmins. Brahma is the creator, in the sense that Christian idea of creator. Vishnu is the preserver. He preserves so the plants grow, food grows. Shiva is the destroyer. destroys. Right? So this is their belief. So you can see it's related to nature. Right? So this is the Brahmanism, belief the Brahmins. Now these Brahmins, they are specialists of religion. They do nothing but study religious texts, chant religious texts, teach religion, that's all they do, and they get supported by through donations. Okay? Now the Brahmins were the key people in religion in the Buddha's time. And Brahmins are very good storytellers. And as you know, even today, the Indians love stories, and there are lots of stories in the Buddha's teaching. If you look at all the world's religion, there are a lot of stories telling what happened and so on. What is the purpose of this story? The purpose of this story is to control human behavior, to control our stories are told so that followers behave themselves and listen to the teacher. Okay? Of course, people who think deeply like me, I say, hey, this is only a story. So people high up don't like people like us. Say, oh, these people are letting out the secrets. But that's what the Buddha did, you see. The Buddha went around telling people, hey, these are only stories. Don't listen to them. You're being exploited. So you begin to see two groups. So the Brahmins, they are called, if you like, the established church. The Brahmanas, the Brahmins. Then you have the Reform movement. So these are the two big groups. The Reform movement, they are called Shamanas. I'm writing a simple Pali word, Samana. Samana is holy man or monk, or priest, monk or priest. So the Brahmanas, let me write the word Brahmana. Brahmana is the actual Sanskrit term. Brahmana is Sanskrit. In English is Brahmin. Usually spelled with a capital, but I prefer small letters. Somehow looks nicer. So the Brahmana and the Shramana. Shramana is the Sanskrit term here again. Same word. Shramana, Pali Samana. So there were two opposing groups, so to speak. The Shramanas, Samana, they were the Reform movement. They rejected the teachings of the Brahmins. Why did they reject the Brahmins? Because number one, most importantly, the Brahmin maintained the four class systems. And this is very important because in the Sutta again the Buddha will say we reject the caste system or class system. Why? Because you are born into these things, in these classes. If you are born, you are stuck there. You cannot choose to move and you got to perform your duties. We are the Brahmins. So this is the story they say. We are the Brahmins. We are born from the mouth of God. That's the story. So to them, the story they say, there are two versions at least. One version is Brahma himself gave birth to the Brahmins to the mouth. Okay? By the way, all this story also found in the Greek mythology, but different way of telling it, different context even. But the Brahmins use it to support themselves. The better known version is the Brahmins said that long ago when the world was first formed, the first human being came to being. And this first human called Purusha, he's huge. I mean, probably he's the size of, I don't know, the whole world, if you like. It's big, So from his mouth were born the Brahmins. Therefore, the Brahmins say, we learn all the sacred scripture, we do the chanting, we do the mouth work, okay? And you feed our mouth, you give donations, So that's the Brahmins, right? And they really charge a lot. By the Buddha's time, they were very rich, very fat. You never see thin Brahmins, they're all fat. And very rich, very powerful, and sometimes with many wives. So they claim Brahma. They are born from Brahma. That's why you get the word Brahmin. Okay? And then they say, from the arms of this Purusha or God are born the Kshatriyas. Very clever story, The Kshatriyas are the warriors. So the task of the warriors is to protect the Brahmins. It sounds like Robin Hood style, those, what do you call, all those noblemen, the knights. And then from his thighs, from Purusha's thighs, are born the Vaishyas, the merchants. The merchants are supposed to work hard, make money, and support the other two classes. Why? Because Austrians are spending their time fighting, so they must receive money. And who's going to do all the dirty work? Oh, the Shudras, they are the feet. So it's an amazing story, is it? So this Brahmin is introduced. The Buddha says, no, we don't agree with this. We reject this kind of system. You are not born pure. You are not pure. You are not born impure. Through your actions, the Buddha says, are you pure or impure? So you begin to have this kind of upheaval. The people like the Buddha reject this teaching. Say, no, you don't accept this. So in other words, what is externalized? The Brahmins externalize teaching. So you got to come to me. You want to go to heaven? You come to me. I will pray for you. You say, no, we can do it ourselves. Okay. For example, the Brahmins say, only you come to us to do the proper rituals, all the proper ceremonies, then only you can go to heaven, right? And what is the word the Brahmins use for rituals here? Anyone can guess? Karma. Karma is the Pali word. Sorry, karma is a Sanskrit word. It's the Pali word. So to the Brahmins, karma means proper rituals. Everything must be properly done. Now you want to pray for your dead father, you got to bring 50 cows, 50 goats, 50 female cows, so much grass, so much this, so much, a lot of stuff. Of course, the Brahmins get all of that. And a lot of killing. That's another thing Buddha objected. A lot of killing. There's so much blood. They got to get all the grass. They got to lay on the ground to absorb blood. It's just very terrible. So the Buddha says, karma is not rituals. Karma is your own conscious action. If your mind is pure, your karma is pure. Your mind is pure, your action also is pure. So the intelligent people were so happy, wow, this is what we want, this is what we're waiting for. You know? That is why the Buddha was so popular. He could simplify the teaching, he rectified the teaching, he liberated the people basically. He said, you don't have to go to the priest anymore. You yourself can free your suffering by purifying your mind, not through external rituals, through internal purification. The Brahmins also like to wash themselves in rivers, the starting of baptism. The Brahmin, even today they're doing that, you know, they go into Ganges River and wash themselves. So there was one Brahmin called Adi Vachagota. One day he asked the Buddha, I said, hey, you know, said, Master Gautama, there is this sacred river nearby, you know? Why don't you go in and wash yourself? You know, all your evil deeds are washed away. The Buddha said, got such thing. You know? Another nun was even more pointed. The nun said, if that's possible, then the fishes and the turtles are the ones who are pure, you know? But they're in the water. Right? And the Buddha said, no, water does not clean you. Water, yes, may clean your body, but it doesn't purify your mind. You've got to purify your mind yourself internally. If you are pure in your heart, wherever you go, that water is pure. If you are someone who pure, every day is a precept day. Every day is a holy day, not just Vesak day, for example. So even if you will still as it is. So instead of external baptizing sacred water, the Buddha said internal baptism. You can purify yourself internally. These are very important things in Buddha's teaching. And then what else? So the Buddha, the Brahmins were talking about donations, you know, giving of, putting food in the fire, offering of food. The Buddha said, why do you waste food? You should offer this kind of food to people who are holy, who don't work, to teach the Dhamma. You offer the food to them. It's much better, rather than waste food. Okay, that's another teaching. So the teachings are in other words, change to be more human-centered, more internalized, more spiritual. So the Buddha accepted anyone from any of these classes to join the Sangha. It doesn't matter what class you are. The Buddha says the Sangha is like a great ocean. One of the characteristics of the ocean is that the 4 great rivers of India, the Ganges, Yamuna, and so on, they all flow into the ocean. Yeah? When they flow to the ocean, the waters merge into the ocean. We don't call them by Ganges, Yamuna, and so on. The names are gone. Right? So the Buddha says, similarly, no matter what class you come from, when you become a man or a nun in the Sangha, you are no more Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaisya, whatever. Okay? So this is very wonderful, liberating, social liberating. This is the first liberation theology, actually. And since the Brahmins are still in the system, the Buddha purposely used the word Brahmana. That's Brahmana, you just it. He used the word Brahmin or Brahmana. He uses it freely. Anyone who is a good man says Brahmana. Okay? So he was a reformer in that sense. Right? So you can imagine the background of the Buddha's teaching. He has to give a lot of teaching, and these Brahmins are very powerful. Very rich and very powerful everywhere. So the Buddha has to go on teaching the people, correcting their wrong ideas and so on, telling them that they can practice themselves, they can do self-effort, they can free their own suffering. In a sense, you might say he was very successful. For example, he taught that people should cut down killing. He was so effective that, in fact, by Asoka's time, whole of India became vegetarian. Even today, you find Indians are vegetarian. Yeah? So the Buddha spoke up. But in the Muslims, of course, it brought back eating. So let me see. I've covered most of the ideas. Oh yeah, this actual age. Yeah? The Buddha's dates. Okay, traditionally, the Buddha was said to be born 623 BCE, before Common Era. CE is Common Era. We're not Christians, so we don't use BC AD. 543 is the date the year Buddha passed away. 543 is a very important number. The Southern Buddhists calculate the Buddhist year by using that number. For example, this year is 2012, right? So you minus 543, eh? So here's 9.
6.
Here is 6.
1 4.
Sorry?
1 4.
2, so 9. So it becomes 9, eh? 4. Eh?
1.
Sorry?
1.
What is 1?
1 4 6 9.
Oh, sorry, add, not minus. Sorry. And so this is 5, so it's 5.
5.
Oh, this is a nice number.
5 5.
So this year is the Buddhist era 2555. But the Sinhalese add 1 year extra because they count the year Buddha passed away as 1. So Sinhalese calendar is different from Southeast Asia, 2556. However, the Western scholars who carefully study the chronology and the dates, they say this is too early, about 50 years too early. So you got to push later, 50 years more or less. Yeah? Okay, there's one more interesting fact on the global dimension. You see, the Buddha lived around the 5th century. So this German historian, he says if you look at the whole history, about 1,000 years before the Buddha's time, 1,000 years after the Buddha's time, you see something very interesting happening in the world, in the civilized world. Do you know what it is? If you look at the world, you take the Buddha as a center of time, and 1,000 years before, 1,000 years after. In terms of religion, what do you notice? The great religions of the world arose during that time. He called it the axial age, from the word axis. Axis means turning. In Greece, we have some of the philosophers beginning to arise. They're called the pre-Socratics, before Socrates' time. In Israel, you have some of those famous prophets, the teachers of the Israelis, the Hebrews. In China, you got Lao Tzu, Confucius. And then in Iran, you have Zoroaster, who started Zoroastrianism. And in India, you have Buddha, Mahavira, and the other reforms. So in a sense, when Buddha arose, it was not really by accident. It was a time when a lot of great teachers arose in the world. And their teachings are, the pattern is very similar. Their pattern is basically always away from magic and priestcraft to doing it for yourself, seeing the truth inside you. Jesus Christ taught the same thing, Muhammad, so the same thing, right? So this Jasper says it's a time religion was turning inwards. Right? You can look up in the Google, you got more Jasper's and Axel Age. So today I'm giving you a historical background why the Buddha arose in India and the nature of his teaching, and why he always talked about internalizing the teaching, looking within yourself, because there are social conditions he has to deal with. He talks about equality. The Buddha was among the first teachers who allowed women to be fully ordained as nuns. Before that, no such thing, because for the Brahmins, women is not even mentioned in their religion. When the father dies, he must have an older son. The older son prays for him. No mention of the mother. I've seen videos, stories about the Brahmins. The Brahmin will eat, and the wife will serve him. The wife serves him and waits. So women are less low. But for the Buddha, they can become nuns. So, and another thing is the Brahmins do not go around teaching their teaching. They will never do that. To them, the religion is theirs, very private, a privilege, God-given. So you are too bad. You are not the Brahmin. You must come to me, and I will pray for you. This was the teaching. Whereas the Buddha says the Dhamma is available to all freely. So, in a sense, you might say that was a great thing the Buddha did. The first time the Buddha freely taught his teaching to anyone who would listen. Of course, to us today, we have so many people doing that. But the Buddha's time was something quite new. The Buddha made his religion freely available. So next we're going to look into more detail various aspects of this teaching. What makes his teaching so different? We look at like being good without being religious, the nature of significance of Tao, the reality of things, the Buddhist conception of what is a religion, what is meant by goodness. For example, the Brahmin uses the word punya, meaning merit, and the Buddha uses kusala, meaning wholesomeness. And then we see the connection with the threefold training, in terms of moral virtue, mental training, meditation, and so on. Okay, we have a bit of time, about 15, 20 minutes. Any questions? This time we can have some discussion, interaction.
So, last year, Buddha died in 2,600 years.
Last year?
Last year, 2001. Is it because they passed 1 year?
Yes.
2016.
20.
45 years of enlightenment.
Yeah, to 2005 there was a very big time, big celebration. It was around 1950 something, right? 50 something. India published some nice books. It was quite some time ago. So another 5 years, I don't know. We might have another big celebration, hopefully.
Is that the Thai calendar also?
Yes.
Because it's always 20.
Thai, Laotian, Southeast Asia, Myanmar, but only Sri Lanka, they had 1 year extra. So when the Buddha passed away, it counts one. Just like Chinese, 1 year extra. I wrote this book quite some time ago. So this was about 1991. Just to give you some ideas. Some of the basic ideas are still there, although I may have. So you can read this as a basic reading. So I will more or less talk about the first 20 pages of that, first chapter 1 and 2 at least. So you can keep this book for your reading anytime you want. That's how I look like when I was a monk in the picture. My picture is on page Roman 5. This was in Malacca, my parents' house. Very skinny. Any other question?
You know,
Yeah.
all these religious teachings, they were all by word of mouth when we first started.
Yeah.
So when it gets documented and when the person who documents it, wouldn't there be some kind of corruption in the sense that they put their own interpretation?
Yeah. It's possible.
Over the years,
It is.
It may not be the true.
It's possible. The people who, of course, the tradition is quite complicated. You have the reciters, you have the redactors. Redactors are the editors. So it's not just chanting. There are also people who more or less, for example, there's a tune to the chant. There are rules about how the words must be composed. So when you listen, you will know. If the timing is right, you know something is wrong. It's like a song. When you sing a song, for example, you say jet engine went up the hill. If you just say jet engine went up and then you stop, you say, hey, something is missing, you know. So jet engine was handed down hundreds of years. So the suttas are chanted like that. So if any word is missing, they will know because of the tune. There are all the rules about the sound system. That's one. But despite that, even Jack Engine, all those nursery rhymes, there are different versions. So yes, we do get human variations. In other religions, the problem is greater. So you have people swearing by different scripture, although it's the same religion, because of different words. But in Buddhism, we just note the different words in the book, and then we say, okay, this is Burmese, this is Sinhalese, this is Thai, and then we give our best translation. So we don't have much problem with that. We call them variant readings. In other words, we record what are the possible changes that could happen. It's not always the case, but if there is, they are recorded at the bottom of the book. If you see some translation, you will see at the bottom, we record them, and then we explain which is the best meaning. Because the final authority is not the written word of Buddhism. The final authority is your meditation. If you look at it and you follow the teaching, the way it describes the practice, does it lead to inner peace? Because if it doesn't, something is wrong. Someone made a mistake. And usually, in fact, we never find such mistake. It's just that from the start you can know that there are ways of detecting such transmission errors. Of course, when they are really wrong, we will know. We will know if we say there is something wrong in this transmission, so people will not take it seriously anyway. So, because Buddhism is not a book religion, it's another important thing we need to know. There are 3 book religions, book-based religion. The word Bible means book. Right? You have the Jews, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. They're called religions of the book. Muslims call it kitab, book. Whereas Buddhism and the Reform movement, they are not book-based. You might say they are truth-based. So in other words, whatever religion you belong to, if you look deeply inside, you will discover something beyond what the religion teaches. For example, even in Catholicism, you find St. Francis behaving very funny. His behavior is not found in the Bible at all. He started talking to animals. He started showing love to animals, very Buddhistic. So the Catholic have to accept that because he was a good monk. But very hard to explain his behavior. But for the Buddhists, no problem. We say, hey, this is compassion. Right? And moreover, at the time of St. Francis, Buddhism was already in Europe. That part, the Catholics won't tell you. And by the way, November 23rd is the date that the Catholic Church officially reserved for the Buddha without knowing it. They call him Saint Josaphat. Josaphat is very close to Bodhisattva. This happened about many hundred years ago. when the religion was slowly migrating through Arabia to Europe during the medieval ages. So the story of Saint Joseph somehow went into the Christian church in Latin and so on. The story is very close to the Buddha story, but they call him a Christian, of course, in this time. And they started worshipping him, and they even worship his bones, and part of his collarbone is in Belgium. It was given to Portugal, given to the king, somebody in Belgium. Then, of course, in recent times when the Catholics found out, oh my goodness, he's a Buddhist, and they quietly removed his name from 23rd November. But we Buddhists remember it anyway. I mean, it's a great day for religious dialogue, isn't it?
And then for Buddhism also, it all came from India, right? But like today, we hear about the Mahayanas, the Theravada, Zen Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. So they become like, there are differences also.
Oh, there is major
right?
differences.
Yeah. But actually, they're not any different. It's like from the same roots.
They're based on basic similarities, but then their form began to change, very different. This is politics. You see, because when Buddhism reached China, for example, again, remember, you got to see the background. What kind of background? We're talking about imperial China, a country which is rich for what, 4,000 years already. Even before Buddhism came, they were greatly civilized. The greatest miracle is Buddhism found a footing in China at all. Christianity never succeeded, even up to today. How did an ancient religion from India, different language, manage to set roots in China? So that again is quite remarkable. One reason is because the Chinese actually converted Buddhism into Chinese culture. They changed a lot of things until you cannot recognize them. But some parts are still there, like the words, similar words, but ideas change. The meaning of Bodhisattva changed. To the early Buddhists, Buddha was born, Buddha died, we're happy with that. But the Mahayana said, wow, cannot be right, he's such a great saint. So they do believe he died. So they introduced new teachings saying that actually he had been living forever. So you have this a totally different approach. Right? And then they use a lot of symbolism. For example, they take a certain aspect of the Buddha, they turn to a Bodhisattva. Kuan Yin represents the Buddha's compassion. Manjusri represents the Buddha's wisdom. So they like to use, in a sense, they re-externalize the Buddha. You know? When Buddha started everything, when he was alive, he internalized it. You must internalize everything. Look within. When you became the Mahayana, everything went out again. You see images, statues, they represent things. Even meditation is no more a matter of whether you realize the truth or not. The teacher looks at you and hey, whether satisfied with you or not. If you are satisfied, fine, you get Dhamma's transmission. Certified. They do that. Zen tradition. You don't get that in traditional Buddhist meditation. There is no certification. So Mahayana also became more ritualistic. And Mahayana also had to fit in with the local beliefs. In China, in Japan, it became worse. Because the monks were becoming so rich and powerful that the authorities were worried of them, very scared of them, in fact. The Japanese monks have their own army, private land, castles,
Army?
Yes, army, of course, Sohei. Private. They're samurais.
Samurai.
Yeah, instead of using meditation, they use meditation for fighting. So the shogun were very worried. In fact, the shogun tried to wipe out the Buddhist priests, especially the Jodo school, the Amitabha school. But they were a very big school. So although the shogun burned down the castle, there were still problems with the members. So in the end, the shogun got very scared. He did not trouble them. He formed alliances with them. But in the end, things became so bad because the Western powers started encroaching into Japan. So the government was very worried. The Meiji period, I'm working on the paper right now. So the Japanese government decided that everybody must work for the country, they have to modernize. So they introduced a rule called, as I mentioned just now, Nikujiki Saitai. That the rule is very strange. The law says, now it's no more a crime for monks to eat meat and get married. But previous to that, it was a crime. The rulers actually enforced the rules. But in the Meiji period, 1872 onwards, basically the government is saying to the monks, you're on your own now. You can do what you like. So there's a lot of what they call opposition from some of the thinking the Japanese monks. They say we reject this. We introduce this law, the Sangha is gone. In fact, you might say in Japan, the Sangha is gone because of this law. So because they were afraid that Westerners would take over Japan, so they would place modernization highest priority. So it's a very fascinating study. I've not finished the paper yet. We studied it. This is in volume 38. Currently we are studying volume 35. Okay. So different countries, Buddhism took different forms, but it became very rich in its tradition. There are good aspects, there are political aspects. Like Kuan Yin is very popular. So my advice is, if you are new to Buddhism, begin simple. Begin at the well, where you must know the basic teachings. Once you know the basic teachings, wherever you go, Tibetan, Chinese, Korean, you will see patterns. It's, oh yes, those are the patterns. The patterns are very beautiful. But the Japanese, the Korean, the Mongols, they will respond differently because of their culture. But we are not Mongol, Japanese, Koreans, so we are Singaporeans. So we respond in Singapore. And then as Singaporeans, we are very free to choose. So why not choose the best?
Yeah. By the way, is Shintoism?
Shintoism is the traditional Japanese kami worship, nature worshippers.
Because they always try to have a Shinto temple next to a Buddhist temple.
Okay, how shall I put this? Their nature beliefs, they believe that if there's a beautiful big rock there, there must be some holy being there. The wind has got, it's a god also. Kami, they call it Kami. Kami is like a deva. Okay. So they're the kind of religion. But it's very old pre-Buddhist religion in Japan. So the Japanese, nowadays, modern times, when a child is born, they go to the Shinto priest to bless.
Yes.
And then when they get married, they go to church, but not Christians. And when someone dies, they call the Buddhist monks. This is the culture now. No, because they're secularized. They really, officially, they're not religious. Yeah. And you see them walking, You go to the office and you see very modern, very nice. But you look up carefully. In Chinese, normally you look down, they put the gods somewhere hidden underneath. Japanese must look up. You will see somewhere up there is a, depends if they're Buddhist, they have a Butsudan. It means a Buddha shrine. If they're Shinto, they have a Kamudan. There's a little shrine up there. And they are quite religious in that sense, but when they're working, they're working. They're very serious. And then comes the festival. Suddenly everybody stops working, all goes somewhere, open space, to be dancing and singing, and they're very funny after that. And that's a typical Japanese,
So they're basically cultural.
Yeah, very cultural. It's a very interesting group of people. They're really group-oriented. They just love doing things together. It's something we need to learn also. They never complain. That's one thing very different from Singaporeans. Yeah, but then of course there are, like all society, you got good and bad. So we can learn the good things. Any other question about today's lesson? Now, if you have any suggestions, things that you want me to clarify, you can email me also, then I can look up the materials beforehand. Because sometimes if you tell me now, I will just answer you, but if you have some bugging question, email me, email Ratna, there are materials in there for you. You can also download this book if you like, History of Buddhism, which is available online at dhammafera.org. The whole book you can download. The files are given in chapters, so you can compile them any way you like. Do we have copies of History of Buddhism? Okay, if not, then we just end here and see you all next week. Right?